I'm glad we're live. And for those watching us, hello and welcome to the second episode of our DeSci Pulse, which is a podcast hosted jointly by BiohackerDAO and Data Lake, which are two projects building in DeSci or decentralized science space. And we're here each week with some guests who are experts in their given topic of science, decentralization, data, crypto, and anything adjacent to that. Today we have got Alexander. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a second. He's going to be talking about DNA health. I think it's going to be really cool. I've seen him talk before, and it was really educational. So I'm looking forward. But before we begin, should we spend maybe like 2 minutes talking about some design news from the past week or two? What do you think, Wojciech? Do you have anything to share?
From the world of DeSci or from Data Lake?
From both.
Well, to be quite honest, recently we have been just working on the launch of our mainnet, which is an important component of our product. So we are more kind of locked away from the world and working on the product which we are shipping by the end of the month. So I can tell a lot about configurations and product stuff. Unfortunately, less about broader DeSci landscape. How is it with you, Michael?
Sounds like you're in founder mode, which I'm glad to hear.
Absolutely founder moding, exactly.
I've been kind of the opposite the past week because I went to Token 2049 in Singapore, and I was literally Monday to Sunday every day of the week. There was like a different mini summit. And it was cool. Like I enjoyed some of them a lot. On Monday, it was a DeSci summit. I was a speaker as well, and there were a lot of other cool people there. On Thursday, I went to the Don't Die Brian Johnson Summit. It was
Nice.
very different to the rest, but it was definitely an experience. I guess that's that's all I can say. But it was really cool. I think. Yeah, like lot of other cool projects will come thanks to his inspiration as well out of that ecosystem. They're building a lot. And on Sunday I went to Network State Conference with Balaji, which was it's not like entirely related to our topics, but I think there's a big overlap, and there's a lot of also very smart people building IRL stuff. So it's usually like societies powered by crypto, but with an in real life manifestation, trying to become cities or states or whatnot. And that was also really cool.
That's actually super fascinating. And what's going on in the Don't Die ecosystem, if I can put it that way, in terms of new DeSci projects?
Oh, so what Brian is doing, actually, I tweeted about it just today. You can see on my Twitter, and I said he's basically building a religion, and he responded to the tweet and he said, yes, you understood me correctly. So I'm not making it up. But he's basically building a religion which is all about don't die on the level of the individual, so achieve your personal immortality. Also don't die on the level of society, so fight these existential threats coming from AI and other places. And he's basically positioning it as the most important question, or like the most important answer that we have right now to all sorts of questions. And he really wants to spur like a whole ecosystem in different places in the world of builders that are collectively like pursuing Don't Die as a North Star. I think he's probably going to be starting, I mean, this did not confirm, but I think he's going to be starting a venture fund that also invests in those. And yeah, he has got these local meetups, and he's going to be doing stuff to kind of coordinate all sorts of projects in that sphere. So that's my takeaway.
That's super fascinating because in theory, there's a lot of kind of foundational overlap between what we are doing in DeSci and what he's doing. so the kind of citizen scientist movement, and of course self data custody and ownership, and focusing on an area of research that's historically underfunded and attracts, I think we can all agree to say, too little attention. I just haven't seen any crypto related project connected to Brian or connected to what he's doing.
So you're entirely right on your first point that basically Brian himself is a citizen scientist. Like, he's just sort of experimenting without having a degree, and that's the whole ethos of.
I understand that now he just wants to do it at scale, yeah. Not one Brian.
He wants to do it.
Right.
Yes, he wants to onboard 1 billion people into Don't Die, and the crypto question actually, it wasn't really a focus of the conference, but he had some speakers. So he had Balaji, who wants to build a network state, also based on this, and he had the CMO of Solana, and I think so. Basically, Brian is releasing an app, and Don't Die app, where you can trace your Don't Die score based on all sorts of activities that you're doing, and you can get a score whether they're contributing to your die or contributing to your Don't Die. And I think it's not going to be crypto powered in the first iteration, but I spoke to Akshay from Solana, and I think he said that probably in the second version they might integrate some kind of tokens for purchasing all sorts of Don't Die health related services. So I think there's going to be some overlap.
Really cool, really cool. I think that we also don't want to hijack the stage from Alexander.
Absolutely.
And make him die from listening to us,
It would be ironic.
That would be quite ironic. So perhaps, Alexander, you'd like to take the lead and tell us more about the exciting stuff that you do.
Thanks a lot. By the way, during the presentation, we also get to Health 3.0, and this is quite related to what you already started. So therefore, perfect introduction. I also brought Justus in. The presentation is in many parts from Justus Forbeck, therefore full credit to him. And I'm not sure how much he is now in the meeting, so if he is 100% present or 10% present. But Justus, if you are present and I talk about you, okay, you are 100% present. Perfect.
Fluctuating. Hi there,
therefore,
and thanks for having me. Keep going.
Thanks a lot.
I try to pay attention.
Perfect, and thanks a lot that you could make it. Because my name is Alex, I'm a more IT person, a startup founder from Berlin. And thanks to Justus and his wife, very much into the DNA field and very interested about it. And that's my background. And Justus, then you can say a few words about yourself.
Yeah. Wait, I turn the camera on. Just running between stuff. Hi, my name is Justus. I'm a medical doctor, also based in Germany. I'm really interested in prevention and all around anything concerning biohacking, hormone replacement therapy, longevity, life extension, and also dabble a little bit with the genetics part, because there's some interesting companies out there that do some interesting consumer stuff. And so patients ask questions, and that led me to also do a presentation about it, but also work with some companies like the Fresenius Institute around genetics, testing them, and then giving lifestyle recommendations. And we are building on the side, and then I go back to you, Alexander, a small tool to get some DNA data from people, and then we can run our own, let's call them algorithms, about some SNPs my wife and I think are interesting, and other people don't look at, even though the data is there. So a lot of data is there, but it's quite hard for the end consumer to make sense of it, and that's one side project we are doing. We are trying to help them make more sense out of it, let's say.
Perfect. And you already said very nice words like SNPs and what you are doing with health data, and that's where we go into now with the presentation. So we will start with a small introduction and the basics of DNA. Then we go into the defects and compensatory mechanisms of our body. Then, as mentioned already, medicine 3.0. And then we talk about case studies, examples, and questions. So we'll round up, I think it will round about 30 to 40 minutes. And if someone has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat. And then Justus and I are happy to answer them on the fly or at the end, depending on the question. So you two guys decide which questions you play to us and which ones not. Okay,
That's
introduction. Perfect. So we start with a small introduction of DNA. I mean, everyone knows this double helix, I think. So it's the structure of the DNA. But we want to look a little bit deeper. So it is made up of nucleotides. This is what you see here in next to the red and next to the blue bubble. And there were always two opposite of each other, and they are an exact mirror. So you always know the other side when you know one side. So if we look, do you see my mouse pointer when I do that?
Yes, we do.
Very good. Okay. So if you see, for example, here, you always know the other side when you know one side, because they are exactly, they are always like on a picture, on an old picture, the negative. If one of them is damaged and you see the other side, you can always replace each other. This is very nice when you make a cell splitting, because then the DNA helix is more or less like split in two parts, and you can make a copy of each side, and you have again a full DNA double helix. And now I also want to go directly from DNA to chromosomes, because we all know we have 23 chromosomes. For a female, they are all identical. For a male, one chromosome is not identical, X and Y, instead of two X. And this is also quite important for a certain point, but chromosomes, we should always remember them when we speak more about the DNA test results, the so-called SNPs. But wait a second, we come to SNPs a little bit later. So we have 23 chromosomes. They are mostly all identical. And when one chromosome has, for example, a bad information, a disadvantage from your mother or from your father, let's say for lactose intolerance, if one chromosome has a DNA damage in lactose tolerance, maybe the other one does not have this damage, and then you are not as much intolerant as a person which has two broken chromosomes, from mother and from father. Because each chromosome, one comes from the mother and one comes from the father, and then you are a new being in the world. Also, for example, caffeine intolerance. You know that maybe some people can drink 2 cups of coffee and they can sleep like a baby, because their caffeine digestion system is working perfectly, because from mother and from father, this human being got a perfect working caffeine metabolism. But other people have one which is not working and one which is working. This is, for example, me. And if I drink after 2 p.m. coffee, I don't sleep as well as my wife, for example. And some people have both broken, and they really notice the real challenges by drinking coffee in general. And this is already interesting, because everyone says, if we stay now with this example of coffee, you sometimes read coffee is good for health, because there were studies which showed that coffee is good for health. But now it would be very interesting. How was the genome of these people who were taking part in the study? Did they had mainly 2 perfectly working chromosomes or perfect metabolism for caffeine? And here we already see what's meant with personalized. So it's depending a lot on the person when we speak about what someone should do or shouldn't do. But we go in detail about that. But this is why chromosomes, to understand, one from mother, one from father, can have some damages, and maybe both are damaged, maybe one is damaged, maybe none is damaged. That makes us very individual. And now, already clear. Now we come to the defects, as already mentioned for the caffeine example. Defects can arise from mutation. So for example, when you have a lot of sunlight to your skin, you can damage your DNA, or other environmental factors which can damage your DNA. And you can have a range of a bunch of defects. So some are influencing each other, some are canceling each other out. It's absolutely not easy. And therefore, our body, of course, has compensatory mechanisms to handle these defects. So it's only because you have a tendency, because of your DNA, to get a certain negative outcome to a certain environmental factor, it doesn't mean that you also feel that in your body. It depends a lot on your environment, and I will come to an example soon. And here again, it can result from a single or multiple genes, such a defect, disease, and it can lead to all kinds of problems. So the simple example is always you cannot sleep when you drink coffee too late, or you have a problem with your digestion when you drink milk. But of course, there's much severe effects like Alzheimer and other diseases which we have in our society. And that's why now we come back to the talk about Brian Johnson and Medicine 3.0. If we look at Medicine 2.0, we always looked at scientific data and tried to make the people compensate what we already see as a problem, as a pain to the human being. And the Medicine 3.0 goes much more into the prevention. So every human is individual, is unique. And how do we address this uniqueness when we give recommendations? Everyone should drink coffee to stay healthy, but maybe not if you have two broken SNPs. So we come in a second to a SNP. If you have two broken elements in your DNA so that you cannot metabolize the coffee as good as other people. A good book, everyone knows him, I think, Peter Attia, Outlife. This is now the German cover, but the English one is the same name, and you should find it if you are interested. But this graph says it very, very nicely. We need to differentiate between lifespan and health span, because medicine, so if you see the straight line, this shows clearly how your health span is decreasing and your lifespan is decreasing. So let's assume this is a human being which is 80 years old, and his health span, his energy, his fitness, his disease-free living is decreasing to his death. And now we have the classical Medicine 2.0, where you treat the diseases. So you cannot carry your grandchild anymore, but we make sure that you don't die too fast and that we can increase your lifespan. But this doesn't mean that your life is adequate. Your health span is a little bit increased, as you can see here, the delta in the y-axis. But is it really, do you enjoy every day pain-free, or do you just live longer? And here Medicine 3.0 comes into place, and similar to what you two guys spoke about Brian Johnson's health app, so like die and not to die. Let's assume we all will die, but the question is, how will we go on the journey to die? And the goal of Medicine 3.0 is to keep your health span as high as possible and then have a sudden decrease to the death. So you can carry your grandchild and you can ride the bicycle and you stop and you die a week later, just to give it a little bit of perception. This is Medicine 3.0. And with Medicine 3.0, we look at the four, not of the apocalypse, the four horsemen, but the four horsemen of the chronic diseases, which is atherosclerosis, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, and metabolic diseases. And these are responsible for 80% of all death of people over 50. And here we come directly, if we look at these four pillars of health risk, and we address them, automatically our health span will stay much higher off the curve during the end of our lifespan, which is, I know that in the longevity sector, we have the goal of never dying, but to be honest, never dying or having a perfect life before dying, this is already much better compared to the average which we are having today. And these are the factors to medicine 3.0. And now this was a very long introduction, but for medicine 3.0, we take the laboratory values, but we also take the genetics and nutrition and fitness. And I think we have a lot of that already on our plate in longevity. I mean, the variables are clear. We look at our data, how do we sleep and so on. The nutrition is also clear. I mean, honestly, I cannot go out with someone from Italia without, and this is positive, without having a very in-depth talk to the waiter what kind of oil is in the food. And this is really positive because I feel normal in this community. And we have the laboratory values like blood values, but also other body markers. But the genetics is a little bit underrepresented, or maybe it's only what I feel sometimes. Exactly. And then when we have these personalized recommendations, we can adjust all these pillars. Sleep, stress, movement. We can give recommendations according to the individual DNA of the human being. So personalized medicine. Now back to DNA. You remember this picture from before about chromosomes and DNA and how the DNA gets wrapped about a protein and then it's a chromosome. And a SNP, when you make a DNA test at 23andMe or any other DNA provider, you can download a file. And in this file, you will get an RS number, and then you will get a genotype, so like CC or something similar. So you will get 2 letters and the RS number. And the RS number is the position of the DNA string, and the letters is how is your encoding of the DNA for both chromosomes. So like I mentioned before, when you are caffeine intolerant, you have totally intolerant, you have on both chromosomes the SNP, a certain SNP, which shows that on both chromosomes you have this DNA defect. But sometimes you have it only on one. So when you open this file, which you maybe have on your computer from your DNA test provider, you will see like 600,000, 800,000, it depends on the provider, so-called RS numbers, which is the position of the DNA stream. And then you will see 2 letters, CC or something else, which says clearly how is your DNA, how should I say it? How is on this specific element on both chromosomes your DNA defect, if there is one. And that's called a SNP. So always when you hear what is the SNP, this is actually then the people mean how is on the DNA at this position on both chromosomes your setup. Okay. SNPs can be used to identify disease risk, or as I mentioned before, and also for genotyping or for testing genetic variation, and also for drug responses. And this is very interesting because in Holland, there is currently no new drug allowance or publication to the public when you don't make DNA-specific RCTs, randomized control trials. So we have now the DNA also in the tests to see if a drug is working or not. And this is really nice because we can recommend now, at least in some countries, or for some drugs, what is the dose based on your DNA? And the drug is only the most extreme example. We can also look at our diet or at our lifestyle recommendation based on the DNA. And now we come to the genotypes. So So now we come to examples. So I will only briefly mention, so we have the COMT genotype and we have the MCM6. And these are two genotypes which I will show you directly because it shows very nicely how you handle stress and how well you can handle lactose based on your DNA. And so genotypes, we start now with the COMT genotype. This is a genotype, how well you can handle stress or not. Because maybe you know that you have colleagues, you have people which you know, and when there is a stressful situation, they can balance it very, very well. And other people, they are really having trouble. They have a lot of body reactions. And actually, now we need to look at the genotype COMT, what this genotype is doing, because it is responsible for the breakdown of neurotransmitters in the brain. And so when this COMT is not working properly, you have an issue to break down the enzymes in your brain. So you have a disadvantage. So you need a little bit more time to handle stress. You need a little bit of more balanced lifestyle. You should not challenge you as much as others in your daily life. And here's this example, the warrior and warrior. So are you worrying a lot? Are you having a disadvantage in your COMT? Is it not working as good as others? Because then you should be much more stress sensitive. You should prioritize your sleep because you sleep less deep compared to people with a good working COMT. And now this is very, very interesting, especially for the longevity sector, because we always tell ourselves certain absolute metrics. You need to sleep at least 7 hours. You need to run every day. But if your COMT is not working properly, it's called a slow COMT. You should sleep maybe even a little bit longer because your sleep is lighter. And if it's working very good, it's not so bad if you get up after 6.5 hours, maybe because it is your individual DNA and your COMT. We cannot compare our absolute numbers between each other. We should always know how is our DNA predisposition to each other, and also cognitive functions and so on. So this decides maybe also, should you be the CEO of the company or should you be maybe a little bit in the second row and support the CEO as good as possible, because we are all different human beings and we all have strengths and weaknesses. On the other side, so always make sure that find your way, find your path, and then compare everything but DNA adjusted. And
can I
yeah, of course,
go for a question about this? I'm super fascinated by this. So when you say you have lighter sleep in this situation, would it mean the amount of deep sleep you're getting is less?
Or maybe you are more sensitive to noise around you. So I'm not sure if you would directly, in absolute terms, say you always have less lighter sleep, so you have less deep sleep. I don't think that this is directly correlated. But if there is a little bit noise around you, or if you traveled, or you maybe drank a little bit at the evening before, you definitely don't sleep as deep as others. Justus, already close, or do you want to add something?
Already close. Yeah, I think it's mainly about the how quick you are in decreasing your stress hormones, and your stress hormones also regulate the amount of deep sleep versus REM sleep versus light sleep you're having. And I think you can quite easily say that the more stress hormones are present in the body, the less deep sleep you will have. Some people may even have a lot of deep sleep, even though there are a lot of stress hormones. But if the COMT does decrease your stress hormones and it doesn't work as well as Alexander said, then I would generally say that you would have problems having more deep sleep?
I'm fascinated by this because I'm recognizing myself a little bit in the warrior archetype. And I've noticed in my aura that my amount of deep sleep is maybe like 1 hour, 10 minutes on average. And it does seem a little bit less than most of my peers that I have compared myself to, who get maybe an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. So this hits home a little bit for me.
Cool. And I really hope that many of us, we need to start appreciating our individualness. That doesn't mean that this is only a disadvantage. So you can also say the other side. I mean, now I would have to ask ChatGPT, but I'm pretty sure we can argue that a slow COMT also has advantages and not only disadvantages, but at least appreciating that only because my friend is making party and sleeps like a baby doesn't mean that I should be able to do exactly the same because I have a different DNA than him, maybe. So that I find the most important, that we appreciate again our own uniqueness and we are soft to ourselves to accept, even if everyone says I should be the successful CEO, maybe I should not, because we are all different, and our education system is trying to make everyone as equal as possible. And I find this very important to appreciate again, that we should find our own way in our own balanced structure. And another important element, because now I want to come to something which is called the lifestyle factor or the environmental factor. So the DNA is not everything. I want to show you that based on the lactose metabolism. And as you know, some people cannot drink milk or too much milk, and they will have clear body reactions on that. And this is because of the MCM6 genome, sorry. And if we look at that, and again, we have 2 chromosomes, and in both of them, there can be a broken or not broken SNP to digest lactose or to break down lactose in your body. And but I have another point which I want to make here. And now we come to the environmental factor, to a genetic disadvantage. And here we have 2 guys. On the left, we have a lawyer, and on the right hand, an attorney, and on the right hand, we have a farmer. And they both cannot handle lactose. They are both lactose intolerant. Let's assume that, based on their DNA. And the lawyer has a very stressful job. He goes often to the canteen. He makes very little sport. He has a lot of stress. And so for him, a lactose-free diet has definitely an improvement of his overall feeling and how fit and how good he feels. But now we go to Norbert. In this case, he's an artist, but actually he's a farmer. So now let's look at Norbert, and he has the same SNP, but he is quite relaxed. Now I see why he's the artist. So his wife earns the money. He is eating a lot of vegetables. He sleeps regularly. He has no worries. And for him, the lactose-free diet has only a very small difference for his overall feeling. And this is what I meant before. Only because your COMT, let's go to the example before, only because your COMT is slow does not in particular has to mean that you will suffer now. If you appreciate that and you make sure that you don't overstress yourself in your daily life, you can have the same quality of life compared to someone with a very fast COMT, or maybe even better, because you appreciate your own uniqueness and you know that you need to take care of yourself. It's always, how do we treat our body? What do we feed to him? And how do we live? And what is our DNA situation? Yeah, exactly. So it's not deterministic. Genes are not deterministic. It depends a lot on the lifestyle factors.
And
Yeah, please.
actually, so first of all, TLDR, become an artist/farmer. But on a serious note, so are we saying that relaxed way of life would suppress this gene expression for everybody, or just for people that have got slow COMT, as you mentioned before?
I would say it depends really how you feel at the evening before you go to bed. So if you notice that you are damn tired, you have no motivation at all, and you already feel depression, slow down with a fast COMT or with slow COMT. So I mean, we can go now into the nitty-gritty, and I think a lot of people are doing that, and say, if you have that and that, then don't do that. And if you have this and this, then do this. So like, if you have a slow COMT and you have a higher stress level than average, slow down and so on. But actually what I find most important is listen to your feelings and check your environment, if it is helping you to feel good or bad, and then make steps to change something on it. But it could be also that I got the question a little bit wrong.
There's one theory that I remember I was also taught in medical school about population health, which is called the health determinants, the Lalonde's health determinants theory. And it's really interesting because it basically says that there are 4 determinants of one's health. The one is environment. The one is our behavior. The second one is our environment. The third one is genetics. And the fourth is healthcare. And what's interesting in this theory is they put a percentage number of importance of every of those factors to our individual health. And they argue that the behavioral aspect is responsible for over 50% of impact over your health. The environment aspect is about 20%. Biology and genetics is about 16%. And healthcare is below 10%. So essentially, environment and behavior combined is over 70% of your determinants of health. Which I find very optimistic because it says that you can actually influence 70% of the determinants of your health, right? So you are not doomed to be a certain way because of your genes, but you can actually influence it through the way you behave or where you live or activities that you perform.
That is really, really interesting. I never heard of that so far. But it goes a little bit to the answer, which I tried to give subconsciously, because for me, all the DNA details is just to appreciate that we are all different. And if we appreciate that we are all different, then at least for me, it helps me to adjust my environment and also my perception and how I talk to myself and to others, because I know we are not identical and equal. And we all need our own ways going through life. And the best predictor is at the end feelings. So of course it's a little bit hard, because if you never slept perfect, how do you know how it feels when you slept perfect? So that's why the DNA gives a broad roadmap, what you should eat, what you should not eat, what you should make, what you should not make in sports and exercise and so on, and food and diet. And then it helps you to feel maybe a bit better. But the tweaks at the end of the day, so let's continue with the slow COMT, for example. If you look only at your DNA and there is a slow COMT, and you should not have too much stress. And this is why you make sure that you balance everything and you stay very quiet and you rest a lot to yourself. Then you tend, or you can go also partly in depression, because somehow you don't push anymore through life, and the success is missing, and you are only a number, and you are not anymore striving for something. So it's a very elegant balance between protecting yourself from a stressful environment and feeling that you don't achieve anything. And therefore, when you feel good, because somehow you balanced your system in a new state, check what fields what can be adjusted so that you feel better. And maybe you need a little bit more stress, even though you have a slow COMT, because you manage to optimize your environment and your social circle. You speak a lot about your feelings with your closest friends, and you have a very supportive environment by your family and your partners. Then maybe you can also challenge yourself a little bit more in work so that you feel mentally fulfilled. And this is why I take the DNA only as a blurry roadmap so that you feel a little bit better by adjusting some of the elements which you already know, and then go from there in the direction how you go. But to go back to you, I think this is really good looking at the environmental factor and about the social factors, because then people will tell you honestly when you look bad, and they don't only sounding board your negative emotions. So show me your friends and I show you who you are. And if you have friends which are as negative as you are, and they only repeat your complainings to yourself, you don't get any step further in the journey of balancing a good life or having a good social life. But if you start to adjust that because you feel energetic again, and you feel that you finally understood something thanks to a DNA report or whatever, as long as you get energy to change something, and you have friends which give you a very honest feedback, hey, you look really like shit, and you complain now for the 5th week in the row about your boss, now please quit and go somewhere else, instead of, yeah, my boss is also shitty, it is so shitty, why is everything so shitty? Oh yeah, it is shitty. So the shit circle talk is so long story short, I think this is really correct, because we need to see the bigger picture.
And you also just opened my eyes to one aspect of it, and I didn't think about it this way before. That 70% of your health is, through behavior and environment, okay, but probably that's because that's only when you adjust your environment and your behavior to be in harmony with your genetic predispositions, which is not one size fits all. So genetics sort of serves as a baseline that you need to examine and discover, who you are biologically, to be able to adjust your behavioral and environmental factors according to your genetics that in total make up 90% of the determinants of your health, right? 10% are the doctors and the pills, right? But 90% is the struggle of knowing yourself, right? And behaving accordingly.
At least this is how I also understand it. And this is a beautiful journey, because it means you have the chance. So it's not written in stone, I have a bad DNA and I cannot change anything. No. You only need to listen to that, and you need to adjust your environment accordingly so that it can help you. Then who says, maybe a little blurry example, but who says that we need so much the doctor advice when we have literated friends and we are smart to read and understand certain aspects? Because the doctors is in general medicine 2.0, and they do an amazing job in order to let the majority of the human beings be as productive as possible until they go to pension, and also after pension, of course. But they keep the productiveness of our society stable. They make sure that we don't die too early. But in order to keep our health span high, and I think no one is even questioning this statement, we need to work on that ourselves in this community. I mean, in the longevity field, it is clear we need to work for ourselves and need to read for ourselves in order to adjust that. So yeah, I see it also 90%, 10%. with the classical medicine.
Always take your health into your own hands. Amen to that.
Yeah, and also, I don't want to go too deep into that, but from our position, it is fairly easy. So it is so easy for us to do that, more or less. But if I look now at Justus and his wife, which are both doctors, well, at the end, when you have a human being sitting on the other side, which is not your own body, but it is the body of a third person, and you tell this person something, you really don't want to risk anything. Fully understandable, because you can risk a lot to yourself, but risking something to a third person is really not comfortable when the recommendation is not playing as it should go. If everything goes fine, no one complains. Hey, I would recommend my friend, you should use this medicine, you will feel better. But if this friend doesn't feel better, then you really feel bad about it as a non-practitioner. So the doctors in general, they have a huge burden and challenge in front of them in order to help so many people in the system. And we can help ourselves to a certain amount, but at the end, when we feel bad, we will go to the doctor. So we trust the system. It's an elegant situation, I find. As long as we are healthy, we can hack the hell out of our body. And when it gets serious, then hopefully the system works. This leads us directly to the last slide. So key takeaways, just do it, go for it. Medicine 3.0, enable prevention, but to be honest, in the longevity field, and I think most of the people which are listening are from the longevity field, that's a no-brainer. We have the tools for personalized recommendations. We can also ask ChatGPT most of the question. The ChatGPT 4.0 is so good. You can just ask him, how do I find out how good my sleep is, or if I should drink caffeine? And then he will tell you exactly the RS numbers which you need to check. And you can check them in your DNA file and tell him what you have, and then he will tell you what that means for you. So the AI is already there, and it's already quite good, just as a starter for most of the people. And let's really appreciate our uniqueness, and let's stop comparing values and start adjusting the values to what is our social circle, what is our environment, and how is our DNA when we compare each other, and not always taking absolute numbers, hours of sleep, hours of fitness, hours of whatever. We really need to appreciate. I don't care if someone else made the perfect workout with the perfect sleep, if I look at him and he doesn't feel well, so then something is off. We should appreciate that. How do we feel and what makes us feel better? And sometimes a deep communication to another human being has the same, even a greater effect than going for 1 hour for the perfect workout in the gym. That doesn't mean that we should never go and work out, but that means we should appreciate that everyone has a different priority in order to feel good. And this is important. It is supporting our uniqueness because it is measured by our own receptors and not by an absolute scale. Any questions from the audience? Anything to add? Justus, do you have something?
How dare you ask me that now? No, I'm waiting for questions, and then I might have something to add.
I don't know if we have any questions from the audience, but I feel like you're basically saying, sorry, Brian Johnson, but your blueprint might not be suitable for everybody, or it might not be identical for everybody, which I would agree with. And it's exactly the kind of philosophy we always preach at BiohackerDAO, which is, yes, start with the recommendations for the average person based on science, but always test things on yourself, measure the result, and adjust based on that, because like I said, you might not be the average person.
Yeah, and I find it also very, very interesting when we look at YouTube health experts or other, let's say, Instagram health experts. So it works, let's say, for 3 out of 10 people, and 3 out of 10 people lose weight, get fitter, enjoy life more. But we never hear about the 7 out of 10 people for which it doesn't work. And then we go for such a program, let's say Wim Hof, to be, this is maybe not such a perfect example, but let's say a very extreme way of going for your health. And we do that and we notice I feel like shit. Then honestly appreciate your feeling like shit and stop with it, because maybe you are one of the 7 out of 10, which you never read in the internet about. And the 3 out of 10 always say it's amazing. And it is true. It is not wrong what they are saying. It is totally true. But there is so many diets in the world. And I really believe every diet works for 2 out of 10 people. And this is what we read and we try to follow. And we should feel free to test everything. We should really be open to test it. But then we should also appreciate it doesn't work for me. And then maybe we should not make keto, and maybe we should not make interval fasting, because it doesn't, I'm one of the 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 people.
I actually have a very personal experience with this when it comes to keto diet. So I tried it finally after a lot of people I know were raving about it, how it has improved basically everything about their health. And I was personally doing keto for over 6 months. So I was fully adjusted to it. I didn't have issues adhering to it, but when I looked at my biomarkers, I looked at my resting heart rate, it was constantly elevated. And when I looked at my HRV, it was constantly down. Very, very strong correlation, like 0.85 correlation with how deep in ketosis I was on a day-to-day basis. So definitely not something that's breaking for me.
Oh. It's interesting that you say you felt good. So you didn't felt bad in particular, but your biomarkers, which you measured, indicated that maybe it's not the right for you.
I didn't feel particularly bad, but I guess I didn't feel particularly amazing either. But yeah, when I looked at my biomarkers, when I looked at my heart data, it was just way less ambiguous than if I just went by my feelings.
This goes again then to Health 3.0, where we have all these 4 pillars to play together in order to find a good way. And who knows, maybe Brian's app will be powered by a lot of AI under it, so statistics, and will also take some of these cofactors into consideration. We don't know that. We will see when it's there.
So, Alexander, from what you're saying, it seems to me like essentially we are saying that there is no shortcuts, that every person should do this kind of heavy lifting of and go through the self-discovery process to know what works for you and what doesn't. And it also kind of reminds me about one sentence in Ray Dalio's book Principles, where he wrote about setting of goals in life. And he essentially said that, not always, when you set a goal, it's not always what you really want or what you're capable for. Perhaps you were, accustomed or influenced by society to always be wanting to be a startup founder and CEO, but it may just not be the way you are. Perhaps you don't have the mental build-up. Perhaps you don't handle stress that well, right? And so on and so on. And what do you do in such a case where you have this desire, but on the other hand, in the self-discovery process, you discover that perhaps it's not, the way that's working for you. And then what you can decide to do is you can either push through, right, and be really determined and you know, against all odds, try to achieve your goal, you know, stay on that keto diet, climb that mountain, you know, in the middle of the winter, half naked, do that Wim Hof retreat. So that's one option, right? It rarely works. Second option is you can change what you want. Which I think is the best option, but it requires, you know, deep reflection about who you are, what you want, what are your desires, and perhaps, you know, a third way is change the way you achieve that goal, right? So instead of being a CEO, perhaps it's not what you seek. Perhaps what you seek is more freedom in your life. Therefore, there's, you know, a different path or a different way of achieving it. But it all boils down at the end of the day to this self-discovery process, which I think that right now we still can't do through, you know, simply ordering a genetic test and reading the results.
Yeah, and at the end, it is only one compass more on the map of yourself. And going back to what you said right now, a common practice is also, because we need to appreciate, we have society, which is manipulating us. We have our parents, which are now this is not in a negative way, but it is manipulating us, how the parents educate.
Right.
Influence is a good word. Friends and early teachers and role models and so on. And one tip is to always ask yourself, when was the earliest time when I had this idea or this goal? So you said the word setting goals. I want to be fit. I want to be thin. When did that start? Where does it come from? What was the earliest time when I thought something like that? Where is the root of it? Or this is like one thing which is recommended, but it's very, very hard because most of the time you don't remember that. And another thing is, to be honest, we need to be open to new technology. Just go to ChatGPT, say ChatGPT, you are now 4 personalities, you are Einstein, you are whoever. So just take diverse personalities and then challenge your assumptions. So I want to be the CEO of the company. Is that good or not? Would you recommend me? So your closest friend circle is just mirroring your own attitude, because otherwise they would not be your closest friends. But if you manage to talk to GPT, you have a neutral party on the more neutral than your friend circle most of the times. All be open to meet people from all kind of different environments and talk to them. If you want to be a CEO, don't always talk to CEOs. Go to artists. Go to other people, go to the Web3 crypto space and talk to these people, how they make their life goals and what is their vision of life. And then you see, maybe you see that this vision fits much more to your personality compared to the vision which you hear from the CEOs of your other CEO circles where you normally hang out, or startup circles. So this unique path, I think, is one of the most important elements, and appreciating that pretty sure you are not on your unique path. So the likelihood is much higher that you are on a unique path of society and of your close ones when you were young. And now you can think about, how do I find my own path? And there everyone needs to find his own way, because this is so... There is no 5-step road in order to be happy, but understanding that maybe your current path is not the path which you really should go is already a very important step of finding it.
I love how we're touching on some very profound truths here today, which go even way beyond the topic that we initiated. And I think that's very useful. But before we finish, I would love to bring it back to DNA for a second, and just maybe ask you a little question about how far along are we right now in the journey of really being able to understand what this DNA is telling us and what proclivities we have, which ones we don't have. How accurate is it actually in its current incarnation? So again, I have a personal example. I've used Circle DNA, which for those who don't know, I think it's very similar to 23andMe, but it's like the Asia-focused version of it. It gives you a set of genetic traits in terms of what's your likely ideal diet, what's your, like you said, how tolerant to stress you are, and also some physical characteristics which are based on your DNA. And for each one of those metrics or traits, it gives you a probability. So it has got either low or medium or high confidence level for each one of them. And so when I looked at mine, some of them were quite useful. It felt pretty spot on, but some of them, it was just completely off. So for example, it told me I have a very high probability of having brown eyes, but well, if you look at me, my eyes are blue. It's just wrong. This is just objectively wrong. So that makes me think, how accurate is it? How many gaps we still have in front of us? And maybe like out of all of these options out there, what are the best ones that people can consider? And you also mentioned just looking at the raw numbers yourself and giving it to ChatGPT. So like let's maybe unpack all of that very briefly.
And Justus, you jump in when you want to address, but this is actually what Justus and Simone are doing right now. They are checking all the sources or many of the sources out there. And first of all, coming to your question. So I think the closer it's connected on a human level, on a body function level. So for example, the COMT, what I showed you before. The COMT is clearly connected to how our brain is handling stress hormones, how it releases you the stress in your brain. So there, I naturally would say you can trust it much more, or the lactose or the caffeine, because when it's clearly or with very intersections connected to your body reaction, then you can just accept it this is now very subjective in my personal opinion. But when it is based on studies, so when it's based on trials, on study groups, and then you found a certain correlation between the study outcome and the DNA of the human beings, it depends on so many factors. It depends on the study size. It depends on which country was it, what was the age of the people, what was the social background of the people. So long story short, when it's based on studies, and when it's a very abstract connection, I would really question that sometimes, because the study can be very robust and very good or not. And this is what I know from Justus and Simone. They look at so much literature, and exactly what you said with the eye color. So some things you just should not claim because it is not robust in the study and in the study outcome. And Justus and Simone are checking each study. I spend a lot of time with them, and that's why I see how they open the studies, they look at the studies, and then they decide if they should take this marker in consideration or not. So as soon as they start their DNA test, their website, where you can upload your file and you get feedback, they will not claim as much as others, but what they claim is pretty heavy based on evidence. And now I need to answer the question. So sometimes it's good what you got told, and sometimes you should really question it. But this is how to answer, and I'm pretty sure GPT already is good in helping you in the specific question. So I could answer now everything, but at the end, it depends on your specific question with which you go to your DNA. And then I would just ask, how robust is it? Because I'm pretty sure it's in the GPT, the information.
And are you saying also that the closer the participants in the study, which it was based on, are to me in terms of age or sex or demographics or other things, the more likely is it going to be applicable to me?
If we would have all this data in the study cohort analysis, without thinking too much about it, I would say yes. So, but I say directly a but. You will not have it. So you will not have a study of a white Western male in your age, 30 of them to have it robust, and then with the DNA in it in order to have it perfectly for you. That's why we should be cautious about taking everything as granted. It feels at some elements really like a glass ball, how we looked at it. But a good start is really medicine. So I mentioned briefly that in Holland, when you have a new medicine which you want to approve, you need to make the RCT with DNA consideration. And then you have already a very robust set of, or very robust study. And if we have many of them, more and more, we will also get better outcome from the results. So I would agree to what you said, but I don't think that something like that is available.
And maybe to add on that, if I may, it's really tricky. You mentioned the brown eye color, and they are not sure like how many genes are involved in eye coloring, right? And then there's something called penetrance and okay, how if the gene says you got brown eyes, is the penetrance 100%, then you should definitely have brown eyes. If the penetrance is like 80%, then there's a 20% chance that you don't have brown eyes. So and also what the report mentioned about the likelihood of things. So it's not always, but especially with all those lifestyle tests, it's always about likelihoods. There's, if you go into definitive answers, then you're always in the doctor-patient relationship where you really look for genetic diseases, like mucoviscidosis or something, where you have really high penetrance genes that lead to that disease if those genes are present. But that's a separate topic again. And if you look at those lifestyle genes, let's say like the COMT gene, then the approach I take is usually to look at the genetics, and then you can ask the question, how's your stress? Are you stressed? If yes, and you got problems with the COMT gene, then you can look also at other genes. There's another called monoamine oxidase, because it's like its whole system. It's not only one gene. And then you can say, look, I got stress and I got that enzyme not working. And then I can take actions based on the knowledge about that COMT enzyme not working. And I can test if those actions based on the knowledge I do have now lead to an improvement in my stress, for example, because we know that the enzyme COMT needs magnesium, let's say, or also something else called S-adenosylmethionine. You need to take a supplement, or you can do meditation or whatever, but you can do an intervention with the knowledge about your genetics and then see if that works. And that for me is the approach I would take. I would never think about the genetics, especially with the lifestyle genetic results we're getting, to think about the definitive answers there. And for the question about who or which provider to check, the landscape is pretty difficult, I would say. Oh wait, I put my video on again. Because there are so many approaches you can check, and then it depends on also where the provider is sitting. If they are sitting in Spain, for example, they're allowed to tell you different things than if they're sitting in the UK or if they're sitting in Germany. And then it depends on if you have a direct patient or a doctor who orders the test, then they are again allowed to say other things again. And that really changes the end consumer result you're seeing in front of your face. It doesn't change the raw file, but maybe it changes the content of the raw file, because they're not allowed to show you certain SNPs, because then they are again linked to diseases. So it's pretty tricky to figure out what to do. And with the recent 23andMe, like all the board people leaving and like the data leak stuff going on there, it's also pretty tricky to think about what to do. Otherwise, I would say 23andMe people, the test was quite nice, also from the raw data I saw. One company, which is super cheap, works, as far as we checked it, is something called Telmigene. They are based in Spain. They use a provider here in Germany, and but it's, I don't have a one provider yet where I would say, look, those results are 100% sure. If you want to go in the 100% sure direction, then you need to look at whole genome analysis, WGA, and then you're looking for a rather price range for 400 to 600 euros per test. And then you get like tons of data about your whole genome, not only SNP testing, but then you're looking again at genetics, diseases, really. So you got those results as well. You need to think about, do I want those results? Do I only want to look at lifestyle? So it's a not yet super consumer-friendly field, I would say, if it comes to having real action steps to know, and not to know, oh, I got brown eyes or blue eyes, because that's like safe to say. Nobody gets sued for telling you got brown eyes or blue eyes. Yeah.
Good point.
Gotcha. Thank you for that comprehensive answer. I think we're running out of time a little bit. I guess the TLDR on the last question is the body is a very complex system. Single traits can be affected by multiple genes. We're still learning. And I guess it just stresses the importance of collecting more and more data to train these models on. And it's something, hopefully, having more data and better AI models, it's going to help us with. And that's something that I think all of us in this call are building towards through different projects, initiatives. So maybe that's a good parting thought. From my side, thanks a lot, both of you, Alex and Justus, for joining us today and educating us on the importance of Medicine 3.0. If you have any more parting thoughts, you can wrap it up with like a 30-second wrap.
I was more than enough. So therefore, Justus, if you like to add something, some last words, I'm just happy to. It always helps to talk about it, and it was a perfect opportunity to again structured thinking about this kind of presentation. So I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for the great environment.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Justus, for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me and for being part here. Thanks, you guys.
Perfect.
Thanks,
And
guys.
for those listening to this was really cool. Yeah, and for those listening to the stream, please make sure you join us again next week, same time. We will have a new guest, which we haven't announced yet, but do stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.